I'm L.A. Little, and this is your daily TA wrap, where we take a look at these markets from a neoclassical perspective and ask ourselves what happened today and what does it tell us about tomorrow. I do this show 4 times a week, Monday through Thursday, live at 9 o'clock Eastern Time here from the base of what is becoming a snowy, at least a cold Rocky Mountains. Not sure what to say about this market other than it is probably the most stubborn market I've seen in a long time. I shouldn't say a long time. 3 months, maybe 2 months ago. It's up, and really doesn't want to give anything back. We're getting into a time frame here where it's either going to correct in terms of price or just time. So far it's been doing it with time, and that is one way to actually correct if it continues, right? But we did have earnings after the bell. We had Apple came in after the bell. That's going to probably set the tone tomorrow. You got the Federal Reserve meeting announcement on Wednesday. Nobody expects any kind of change there. If there's anything said whatsoever about tapering, that's going to be a negative. In general, we're starting to see money pour into the safety sectors, which is kind of interesting as we get here towards the end of this move. If I pull this up, sort it, this is the safety sectors, XLP, all of the XLU. Really gave it back up at the end of the day. The XLP money's just pouring into it, and I kind of I see a question up here about it, so we'll look at it in detail. But as you get towards the end, people want to try to get safe. Well, how do you get safe? Well, you move that money or some of that money out of whatever it's in and into something else, keeping the money in the market, but moving it to something that pays you a dividend, looks good on the books, and probably isn't likely going to get hit as much as the other stuff if in fact a hit comes. So that's probably what's behind the rotation here. Let's go back to the ending numbers on the closing quotes. All right, here we go. So basically flat. I mean, nothing moved, right? I mean, we could go through all these. The only one that was up or down any percentage whatsoever was the S&Ps. They tacked on about 2 1/3 points, 1762. Now, remember when we looked, and I'm going to switch to a different set of charts now. When we looked at the S&P before, probably about a week ago, we were talking about that there was two ABCD structures in place. And I'm going to pull this over so we can see both of the time frames. Those two structures, really, on the weekly here, you had a structure that went from the A point here, which was the June low, up to the July high, back down, and then up again. And then inside that you had a smaller one. A here, B there, C, and a D. So you had two of them nested together. The smaller one had already completed. That one's done. Now it's just the larger one that's still out there. And that thing measures up to about 1781. Excuse me, I think it was 1783. We're trading at 62. So we're 21 points away, right, in terms of how far before we get a fulfillment of that ABCD structure. So that's one thing that's going on. The other thing that's going on is that we're extremely stretched, and we just started an ABCD structure on the daily, which if it were to complete, it would be huge. Much larger than the weekly, 1646, 1759. So you're talking about 113 points, right? Now, I mean, I can believe some stuff, but 113 points off of here, that would be a heck of a move into the end of the year. Um, I'm not going to say it can't happen, but that's what that one projects to and doesn't look right. We didn't get our volume numbers in tonight, so I'm going to switch back and forth between our charts and these charts so that we can see what the volumes look like. So let's do the indexes first, because that's the only ones I don't have the right volumes on, because they didn't print tonight yet. 17, so we actually did slightly less volume, but we got over the highs and stayed over it. So that's the SPX. That says this thing can climb some more. Now after hours, Apple reported, and Apple traded down. Actually, Apple had a heck of a range after hours. It traded down as low as about 503, I believe, is where I saw it trade to. And then it flipped around and went all the way back up as high as about 536. Ended up closing after hours at 525, down about 3 or 4. We also saw some other earnings, of course. The latest chip stock to get hit, PMCS, got hammered after hours. But the story tomorrow is going to be Apple. What does Apple do? Does it trade down off these earnings? Apple typically runs up into earnings and then trades off, although that has changed a little bit of late. Not as bad as sell-offs because it's sold off so much. I remember Apple was, about a year ago, was 700, and now it's trading. It traded as low as 300s, and now it's trading at roughly 5.25. Let's look at the Dow Jones. Let's see what kind of volume we got in here on this guy. So the high yesterday, or Friday, 15,570. We closed at 15,568. So that's actually a 2-bar reversal after an extended move, and it's a doji to beat, on top of it. So the Dow volume's there, everything looks right. This thing wants to try to come back. So that's the situation on the Dow. Let's look at the composite. Now the composite couldn't even get going. Did it test the low? 329. Let me see. Where is it? 39.2750. It did. Less volume. That's interesting. So remember Friday we had an over under. In other words, we went over a previous high there and closed underneath it, but we had an expansion of volume. Well, today we didn't do an inside day. We actually traded underneath Friday's low and then closed back above it. So that simply says this thing can consolidate more. Let's see if the NDX did the same. And it did not. The NDX was an inside day, which is a slightly different pattern. And so, again, big move. It's been consolidating, so to speak, right, for about 6 days up here. Volumes way off today. You're inside. Another doji. That one can actually trade back down, and at this point doesn't have to test the top anytime soon, because now you traded inside, right? You didn't set a new low. You didn't, of course, test a high. That we're going to actually trade back. Let's see what the Russell did, because the Russell was the one that gave us the signal Friday that wanted to pull back. There's no volume on these charts, so let me go to the IWM. Wow, no volume whatsoever up here. So this has been consolidating for 7 days up here at this higher range, and absolutely no volume coming into this thing on this consolidation. So that can continue to consolidate. It looks to me like it will try to come back down and test this lower range now, because it hasn't been able to get over it. But there's nothing here to say. Is you're going to get a hard sell-off. You did get the sideways. When you get a 2-bar reversal, you should get a sideways day at best. Negative, down day, if it actually fulfills. And in this case, it didn't really fulfill, just sideways. So tomorrow I would expect a little pressure here. The real test is, what do you do when you get back down here? Do you break down, close the gap, or not? because you actually have breakouts that on some of these they actually need to do retest regens, and they haven't yet. All right, let's pop over to the sectors, and let's see what they did, because last night we had about 4 or 5 of them that still wanted to work higher, and then we had another set of them that wanted to work back. IYT had a failure, and this one wouldn't give it up. This one actually went up higher. 125.80 is the close. The high yesterday, 125.75. So that one refused to back down. It sure looks extended and it sure looks tired, but so far it won't even take a 2-bar reversal. That's just how sticky this thing is. The semiconductors, even though we've seen a bunch of semis blow up, the index itself or the sector itself doesn't want to give it up. Let's see, so today it tested up into the gap. It looks like 40.62. It did 415 against 2. Absolutely no contest. That one should fail right there and come back. Yeah, the semi should come in tomorrow. Okay, so semis. So IYT looks extended, but it isn't given a, it didn't pay attention to the reversal, went higher anyway. XLB was going to try to test the top again. Looks like it tried. 44.28, 44.24. Today did 44.29. So it did. It tested the top and left more volume. 5.5, 6.2. The thing can test again. It's basically consolidating and testing to try to get higher and can't. Which, given the setup, can actually try again. XLE, this one looked like a failure into the bar. Still looks like a failure in the bar. That one should try to come back. XLF, this was one that wanted to come back. And of course it just can't come back. 224 on the volume yesterday, or Friday was 280. This still looks to fail. XLI, this is probably one of the strongest ones of late, and let's see if it got a failure finally. 48.78, got over it, 5, yep. So that's a 2-bar reversal. Will it matter? How many times can we get 2-bar reversals and they not matter? Now this is definitely extended at this point, so as they get farther and farther extended, the 2-bar reversals have a higher and higher probability of succeeding. So, when they're down here and you get a 2-bar, it's not too far yet, right? Now you're fairly extended. Fairly fast move, fairly short period of time. In terms of percentage move time. That looks like a failure. So we're seeing failures across most of these tonight. XLK went back to test the top. 33.65, got the 4. Closed at 2. That's a new high. In absence of anything else, that could probably test again, given that Apple's 23% of the weighting in the NDX, and I don't know how much in the XLK, but a good piece of it. That one's probably going to struggle tomorrow as a result of it. Of course, we may wake up and Apple be back up at 536, and it won't matter, right? So here's your XLP. Here's the breakout. Let's pull over and look at the weekly. 42.20. Yeah. It doesn't have a volume, but it's a clean breakout. It broke out on the weekly across this swing point high. Today, of course, you got to wait until Friday to get the weekly, but it's breaking out over another one. You get a breakout last week on the daily over the swing point high, and I was hesitating to believe this thing because it was consolidating up there. Did a small retest regen on Friday, but the weeklies hadn't printed until Friday, and once they did, look at the volume come into this thing. That one's gonna go higher. It's finally done, and and the good thing about it is it can go quite a bit higher because you've got a consolidation now for what, 5-6 months. While the rest of the market's been going up, this one's been going sideways. basically since here, April. So April to October, that's about 6 months, right? 6 months of sideways, yeah, you've gone long enough. You can get a decent move now. Boy, the volume just poured into that thing. XLU. Okay, so this one was trying to get higher, couldn't do it. That's another failure at this level. It looks like it, now this one's not as extended as most because you had a big pullback in between, but it's still reasonably extended as a 2-bar reversal again. XLV, this one was at the highs, consolidating, volume comes into it. Now this is also a safety sector that has some juice to it, so it doesn't surprise me if they're going to move to safety, they're going to move to this one too. Now this one is already over the highs on the weekly, and that looks to go higher. XLY was the strongest, and today that looks like an inside day today. 62.94 was the low. 62.94. Yeah, I actually got underneath it, so this one's going to trade back some. So most of them are going to trade back. Most of the indexes, sectors. You got a couple of them that are going to try to stretch higher. In particular, the XLP looks extremely strong. Big move, big volume coming into it. That one's going to trade higher. Let me look at the OX markets. I think the bonds sold down again today, which would put interest rates up a little bit higher. Yeah, not big, but yes, they did. And they're going to come back and do the retest regen. So the key on these as they come back is, how does it come back into the bars? We got 7.5, we got 9.7, and we're doing nothing on the way back. So unless volume expands, now remember, Fed meeting is on Wednesday, actually starts tomorrow, finishes on Wednesday. So the volume probably will come into this thing on Wednesday, and so how it's set up and how it trades, you could definitely get the volume to bring this thing back, because it looks like it's ready to try to come back. Let me look at the dollar. The dollar was up early, and it looked like it gave most of it up. It held on, so up a little bit, 4 cents. Key on the dollar is, the first 2 places are right here, and so it's coming right into them right now. Got a little volume expansion today. Let me see what the FXE did, because since that's the largest weighting, because this one has to fail. It was up there on the weekly. The high on the weekly is trying to get back into is 136.03. It'll probably come back into that, and then we'll see what it wants to do. That'll be the test. Low here is 135.88. So that was the breakout bar. Also on the weekly, that will be the test area. Not that much farther down. Let me see. Gold and silver. So gold was up and then traded back down. Yeah, so gold went in and fell again at that high. So I would think gold's going to trade back down some. Let me see if silver did the same. And it did. And oil. Oil was trying to bounce up higher. It did. It got up into that bar. Bottom of that's 35.39. Closes into it. So, and that was the gap down bar, right after that. So the question here tomorrow will be is, can you stay in this or not? If you can reach the other side, which will get you back up to do the retest regens. If you can't, then you of course set up at a larger ABCD structure back to the downside. Okay, so let me see. Let me take a few of your questions here and see what we got. Hello, would you give me your opinion of stock symbol MY? Well, I don't know if I have MY in my database, but maybe I do. I've never heard of it. Is MY the symbol, or is that, let me look on, let me pop over here and see if I can find it for you. Yeah, there it is. So what is this one doing? Let me see if I can get it up on my charts. Yep, perfect. Alright, so you're coming back into this big bar, 266, wind power. So alternative energy. Okay, now the only thing I would look at is that you have, you know, this thing has sold off for a very long time. This is the monthly. So when they do this, it's hard. There's a lot of, you know, look how many months it traded here, about 6 months. So there's going to be a lot of sellers in this area that got beat up all the way down and tried to buy here and got underwater. So even though you get the volume expansion on the way back up, you're coming into, you know, the first thing to notice is that you're coming back into a decent supply line there, right? So this doesn't look bad. I mean, it had a nice breakout. These Chinese stocks I always worry about because I never know, you know, when I look at their fundamentals, I never know if they're real or not. The low here's 322 on that one. The high was 266. 266 is where it closed, did 3.2 back into 5, almost 6, 5.6. Well, just from a purely technical point of view, this is where you'd buy it, right, into this bar if it holds, which it's held. The other piece of it, though, is how far do you expect it to bounce back up? I would think the bottom of this bar. So that bottom is 288. You're trading at 266, so that's 22 cents. What's your risk? Well, really, you got a risk back under these swing point lows underneath here. So just take the lowest is 269. Excuse me, 238. So 238 down, you know, you're 1-to-1 at best. You're actually less than 1-to-1. So you almost got to let it come in deeper to even try to buy it, because I can't see the reward risk here. So even though, yeah, the setup is here, if you're going to trade it, you're going to have to put a tight stop, which is going to give you a much higher probability of stopping out on it, and that would be bad. So I think you have to just forego this one. Next one, XLP I talked about already. XLU didn't have more volume today on daily. Well, maybe I misread it. I thought it had... Well, I was comparing to this bar, right? It's actually, I probably said 2-bar reversal. That's not quite correct. You went over this high, less volume. That was what I was looking at, but I think I did say 2-bar reversal. So this isn't a 2-bar reversal. It's a test of the highs on lighter volume failure, and you actually get a doji as well. You know, so I got a few minutes here. I want to pop over to a another view, and in this case to the let me go back here. Where's it at? Here we go. The world markets. Because last night I really didn't have time to look at these. So while I have a chance here, I'm going to flip through these, see what they look like. Australia, new highs, stretching higher. Okay, nothing new there, huh? It's been doing that for a while. The Nikkei sold off Friday, bounced pretty good yesterday. Inside day, I don't think that one was going anywhere. Taipei, this is chip country. I wonder if they're doing as well as our chips. And they are. They're hanging up there. So they're testing the high, and they don't have the volume, but they keep testing it. So they're slowly eating up the supply line is what they're doing. The Korean market, export driven, trying to take out all the highs. This is like the world. The world looks the same, right? Everybody's taking out highs. Hong Kong. All right, now this one looks different. Very different. This is interesting because you're in really kind of two zones here, right? And it almost, the resistance zone lines up that way. But the bar it's coming back into on the weekly is here, 22,699. At the same time, you've got a bunch of swing point lows here that you're trying to break, and did break last week. Usually, that leads to a fast move in the direction of the break. And in this case, today, it didn't. So it's just kind of interesting, and the reason for that is all this volume sitting here on this weekly. It's coming into it and it can't break it down. So here's a case where usually a fast move would take place. You could almost blindly buy those things or short them, but in this particular case, you got a contingency here, and that is keeping it up. Let me look at Europe right quick. Wow, this is interesting. So you're seeing a little more volume expansion on the way down. This is on the CACs. You already had a retest regen off this high. Now you're just going to come back in and test into it. And it looks like it will test into it tomorrow. Weekly still looks fine. How about the FTSE? The FTSE is much more driven by commodities, metals, and so forth. This guy's been on a heck of a run, just like the XLB. It doesn't have the volume though, as it's trying to break. This looks like it will come back in here and do a retest regen off this high on the short term. And then the last one, the DAX. Let's see what the DAX looks like. Well, I don't know what the volumes were today, but that's a failure. And after an extended move, potentially a 2-bar reversal, and you may end up getting one on the weekly as well. So, you know, folks, the story here in my mind is what it's been for a while. This market's going to correct, whether it does it through time or it does it through price or it does it through both. It's going to do it. It's reluctantly given anything back so far. I mean, absolutely nothing. And that just tells you that you've had a heck of a move. You're in that time of the year. You know, all news is good news, etc., etc. But we will get a correction either through price or time or both. I would expect we see it this week. This is 8 weeks of up, pretty much. And that doesn't last forever. So I would keep waiting for the retrace and you know, extending what you got, and you know, holding on to what you got, and just being careful. There's going to be a shot in here somewhere to get a much better price, in my opinion, and it may not be that far off. Folks, thanks for being here. Take care. I'll catch you next time.